going to go ahead and move on to the third item on the agenda for this month. This item is a presentation from the Office of Police Oversight in the Austin Police Department on the critical incident video release policy. This item is sponsored by Commissioners Hollis and Harris. Commissioner Harris, do you want to say anything before we get started?
Sure. So I'm very happy to see an update on this. It's I think an important and critical part of this city's very substantial investment in body cameras for police officers, that there be transparency about particularly the most critical incidents, in order to achieve the promise of body cams, which was that everyone that's in the video, whether you're on one side of the camera or the other, that you would act better because of the existence of that video. That promise cannot be achieved if there is not transparency, particularly around the most critical incidents. And so I'm very hopeful to see movement coming forward on this topic, and look forward to the presentation. Thank you.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and have our presenter get going, and we'll give you 10 minutes to present, and then we'll have some questions for you, okay?
Okay, thank you. Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Farah Muscadin. I'm the director of the Office of Police Oversight, and hopefully I'll be co-presenting with my friend and colleague, Chief Gay, because we have been working on this policy together along with a group of community groups from various organizations. And just to give you a brief history, this conversation about the release of body cam footage for critical incidents really started around the time we were negotiating the contract, and it was put forward as something that we needed to work towards by council. So we have been working on this for quite some time. So I did some research on cities across the country that had something similar, and I came upon the LAPD critical incident release policy. And that policy for them passed, I believe, in April of 2018. They have a pretty robust oversight system there in LA, and I made contact with their Inspector General's office, who was integral in passing it and pushing it forward. It was approved by their police commission. And just to give you a little background about LA, I mean, they have 10,000 officers. Their average officer-involved shootings, they're about 30 a year. And so when they've had this policy for about a year and a half, and what they did is they created a YouTube channel where it's called a community briefing, and they provide a synopsis of what transpired, I think, within 60 days after an incident occurs. And I see it as twofold. I see it, one, as obviously transparency, which is important to our community, showing what happens in these incidents with the information that is available at the time. Because what you will see in these videos is that they do say this is prior to an investigation. So the information that they have at the time of the incident, and also from an educational perspective of the community, of showing kind of what goes into from the policing standpoint, what goes into addressing these incidents. So I've watched several of these videos, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to show you one as an example of what we're working towards. But for example, one of the videos that I watched was an incident of an armed subject in a restaurant. And so you were able to see the police come to the scene, a sergeant take charge, give direction in terms of the strategy of how they were going to get the subject out of the restaurant. And so I see that as something that's important from an educational perspective for our community, to see that side of it. But the video that we are going to show you is actually an officer-involved shooting. But just, we're still working on the policy. The policy is still draft. So this one pager that you have before you is really, really high level summary of what we're working towards. So it just really talks about the overview, public trust, transparency, which we all know is very important to our community. And then how we define critical incidents in this context. And so in terms of what videos would be shown and made public. And then we talk about the time frame in terms of when the release would occur, examples of when there may be a delayed in release, and then also notification and consultation. So for example, OPO will be consulted when videos are created. I think it's important that we be participant in that. We obviously have a different lens, and so I think that lens is important in terms of what the end product is going to be that shows to the public. And so we still have a little work to do, but I think this has been a very good partnership with the community groups that you have listed, with the police department. They have been working on a pilot video, and I think that pilot video is going to be really important. Just one, so that the police department can go through the process of creating this video, and two, at least showing an example of what these videos could look like from an APD perspective. And so they're still working on that. It's I think coming along. I think they're pretty much putting the finishing touches on it, but I think creating that was a step in the right direction so that we could at least see what the video is going to look like. I know that was pretty quick, but Chief, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I just wanted to, thank everybody that participated in this group. I think it was truly a collaborative effort. I know the DA's office was a critical partner on this in reference to that they're the ones that are prosecuting these particular cases and looking at them. So their commitment to release these prior to the case being completed is really a sort of a barrier that we had to overcome. But I think that we're there now. I think the policies is really about 90% complete. Some of the challenges that we had is you're about to see a video from LA. It's a great video. It puts the incident into context. And I think other than just showing a video that you see on the news and you have to sort of guess or fill in the blanks, and the video actually puts context into it so you can be educated about the process. And as Farah had mentioned, sort of some of the strategies that went behind why they took the actions that they took. So I'm just excited about us getting this done. As I was explaining to Commissioner Harris prior to the meeting, ATXN is the group that it will be putting the videos together for us. This has been a challenge for us to put this together. It's somewhat new, as LA has a huge budget and they do this over and over again. So I think as we produce the videos, each one will get a little bit better and the process will get a little bit smoother. So we do anticipate to meet the deadline that Council requested to have our policy out by the end of this month. I do believe that we'll be able to achieve that, and hopefully we'll show the stakeholder group the pilot video here in the next couple weeks. And
So,
with that,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, showing the video
Yep.
will make this one-pager make
Yep.
so much more sense. I think it'll be helpful to kind of see what we're talking about in terms of these briefings.
Absolutely.
Hello, everyone. I'm Josh Rubenstein, the Public Information Director for the Los Angeles Police Department. This critical incident community briefing is intended to provide you with information about an officer-involved shooting that occurred in the Central Division, the city of Los Angeles, on February 14th, 2019. You're about to see relevant video footage and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case, so you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The LAPD conducts very thorough use of force investigations, which typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, view numerous hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the very early stages of this investigation, which can often take up to a year to complete, and our understanding of the incident may change as this additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw any conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until all the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution. The images and information you're about to see may be disturbing. When a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language used by those shown in the video. Viewer discretion is advised, especially for young children and sensitive viewers.
Hello, I'm Captain Giselle Espinoza of Media Relations Division of the Los Angeles Police Department. I'm going to give you a brief overview of an incident that occurred on February 14th, 2019, around 6:51 a.m. LAPD officers assigned to Transit Services Division were walking a footbeat in the mezzanine level of the Metro Centro station located at 7th and Figueroa Streets when they were flagged down and directed to a male Hispanic armed with a knife. The officers located the individual, who was later identified as Wilfredo Hernandez. Hernandez was armed with a knife and had been involved in a confrontation with Metropolitan Transit Authority security officers earlier. LAPD officers approached Hernandez, who still had the knife in his hand. They attempted to use a taser on him, but he charged at the officers with the knife, which resulted in the officer-involved shooting. You will see Hernandez holding a pocket knife in his right hand and walk towards the MTA security officers as he walks through the turnstile. The officers approached Hernandez and the security officers. One of the officers attempted to use his taser on Hernandez, which had no effect. Hernandez then charged one of the officers while still holding the knife as the officer backed away, and that is when the officer shot Hernandez. Hernandez's knife was found on the ground nearby where he fell after being shot. Immediately after the shooting, officers requested assistance and the Los Angeles Fire Department paramedics. Paramedics pronounced Hernandez deceased at the scene. Hernandez was a 47-year-old resident of Los Angeles. He did not have any prior contact with the department's mental evaluation unit. However, he did have prior arrests for trespassing and narcotics possession.
The LAPD will continue to investigate and analyze this incident over the next several months, as forensic tests are conducted and the final autopsy report is completed. They'll also interview any new witnesses that may come forward. Now, after the investigation is finalized, our Critical Incident Review Division will forward their findings to the Chief of Police, who will make his recommendation to the Civilian Board of Police Commissioners. The board will evaluate the evidence to determine whether the officer's tactics, drawing and exhibiting a weapon, and use of deadly force in this instance met the high standards expected of all LAPD officers. If you'd like more information on how the LAPD and the LA District Attorney's Office investigates all officer-involved shootings and other serious uses of force, visit lapdonline.org, where you can also find LAPD's use of force policies and procedures. Thank you for taking the time to view this Critical Incident Community Briefing.
Thank you for that presentation. Do any of the commissioners have any questions?
I just have a question. If you could address the delayed release, who determines that? Is that the chief of police?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and it's primarily based on the statute. The statute pretty much gives the chief full authority in terms of release of body cam.
Okay.
Is the intention here to present raw video of an incident and then put context around it like we saw in this example, or is it just to put the raw video out there?
To put the raw video with context.
Okay, so every incident that there's a decision to release it, there'll be
some information provided by APD about what this was about, what they believe happened, that kind of thing.
Yes, sir.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a comment. Well, I would say that's an interesting choice that y'all brought here. I would encourage folks to go out to the LA's site where they have all the videos. One issue that I have with the approach that they take is in talking about the prior criminal history of any persons involved in the video. And I'm hopeful that that's not going to be standard practice, or if it is, that we can similarly hear about any previous violent incidences involving the officers that are in the video.
Commissioners, we actually talked about that, and we agree with your assessment that that doesn't have any bearing on the particular incident itself.
I'm not sure if somebody can answer this for the DA's office, I guess. In the event that there is a criminal prosecution pending, how is that going to be handled?
So that's part of the reason why they were so important in this conversation. The way they explain the process, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, is they're going to evaluate it, and they have an idea whether or not it's going to go to grand jury or what they anticipate criminally that may happen. And so from that point, they would be able to make a recommendation to APD about the release. And so the implementation of this process does require the DA's office to alter some of their practices, potentially expedite them in a way to allow for this release to happen. Hopefully I represented that correctly for them, but.
Right, and we actually went over, because we felt it was important on the timeline, the sheet, it talks about the release, the delayed release, and sort of goes over, we tried not to just say the chief can just decide not to release it. We actually have to provide, and we have some guidelines here in the policy that says the chief has to summarize why the release is not going to be made. And as you notice, it talks about here at the 60-day mark, the chief will have to say, we will not be releasing it in the 90 days for this reason. And then in the policy, it talks about continued follow-up, saying in another 60 days that there will be another follow-up of the chief will then have to publicly give either the same information or additional information of why there's no release.
And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but
I mean, you were a part of the process.
Yeah, one other thing on this, I think I'm really hopeful that we can bring the number of days down at some point, particularly once the process gets worked out with ATXN and all of that. I mean, again, in LA, it's 45 days. You have cities like Las Vegas regularly releasing videos within 10, 15, 20 days. And I think the issue around, a potential prosecution is a little bit overstated. Folks in those jurisdictions are not complaining that jury pools are being tainted on the basis of the release of these videos, and I don't think that that's going to be the case here. That these are going to get so much traction that we're going to not be able to, find grand juries or what have you for these cases. So just wanted to put that stuff out there, and again, I'm hopeful about this, but would definitely want to continue working on it.
Just wanted to state that, as I told you earlier, our commitment is to not wait until the 90th day. Our commitment is to release the videos as soon as possible. And if that's at a 20-day or a 40-day, then we will try to get the earlier date and release the videos.
Hi. Was there ever any discussion about having a version of, one that does have all this context, but then also a separate version that's just the raw footage? Or is it still going to be where people have to fill out, information requests to get just the raw footage without all of that extra context? And then my second question was, in terms of like the video production and all that, does the Office of Police Oversight have any input into the production of the video, or is it strictly APD working with ATXN?
In any future videos, absolutely. OPO will have some oversight and input. I think in this particular one, the IA investigators, as well as the Special Investigations Unit with our PIO, was working with ATXN just to get the ball rolling to try to put something out. That is where all the stakeholders, as well as OPO, will have input into our final products. That's what they'll see in a few weeks, and they'll be able to tweak the process. But absolutely, moving forward, they will be part of that process.
It is in the policy
Yes.
that we are part of we have to be consulted in terms of the production of the video. In regards to your first question, this doesn't, this is not meant to be in the place of a request for peers. This is really meant to provide proactive transparency in a way that Austin hasn't done before, and I don't think any agency in Texas has done before. And so it's not meant to replace that. So people who would want the raw footage would still have to follow the regular protocol.
So I'm going to save the last comment for myself, as I often do. So my biggest concern is that you're asking us to provide input on a policy that you need to get before council before the end of the month. We don't have another meeting before you're going to be presenting this policy. So you're asking us to provide input on a policy that we're not seeing. So I'm not sure how valuable what we're doing right now is absent actually seeing the policy and the ability to say, hey, what about, this, and engage in a very transparent process in our own body. Is there any possibility to have a policy sent to us that we can see before you guys take it to council, so that if there are any concerns or anything like that, we can have an opportunity to voice them in some format?
So I just want to clarify, this policy it's an APD policy. So it'll be approved at the executive level at APD. It won't necessarily be going to council for approval. But I do think that we have some input that we've got from our community stakeholders in regards to the policy. And I think after we work that out, I do think that there's an opportunity to send it to the commission for feedback at that point.
No, absolutely. We should be able to send it to you here in the next few weeks to get some input.
Awesome, thank you. I just hate saying that we've commented on a policy that we've never seen. So, yeah. All right, great.